Welcome to Year One, a podcast meant to dive deeper into the successes, the fears, the hacks, the good, and the scary about first-year ownership of an agency. I'm your host, Christian Gani, co-founder and partner at Outerkind, a creative agency based here in soon-to-be very chilly Denver, Colorado. Today's show is fully supported and produced by Indie Agency News, the global home for independent agencies. So for more information about all the great things that Indie Agency News does for indie agencies, head over to indieagency.news for all the latest. So, year one, why are we here? Well, three things, really. Number one is to educate people on the realities of starting something new and taking that leap of faith. Number two would be in service to agency talent around the world, providing them with some level of confidence and belief and the realities of new agency creation. And third is really just to inspire. In a world of agency consolidations and turbulent employment, and in some cases, but not all, where employees are numbers and maybe not valued or well-voiced members of a creative team, show them that maybe there's an opportunity right in front of them. So thanks for being here. And today, I could not be more excited about who we're talking to. Our very first guest, she is an award-winning creative director, writer, and co-founder of a creative agency that makes people give a shit, which is why we do what we do. She's led creative accounts for brands like Alaska Airlines, Frida, GameStop, Amazon, DiGiorno's, YouTube TV, Vitamin Water, and also several Netflix shows, including one of my personal favorites and that of my kids, Stranger Things. Please welcome our very first guest, Rachel Carlson from Foulmouth Creative. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Christian. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for being here. How are things? You're joining us from Seattle today, I would imagine. Yes,
I am. And you're getting me just after recovering from norovirus this whole week.
Ooh,
so
yes,
you can just paint a beautiful picture of that and how that went.
Yeah, that actually wasn't one of the missions of the Year One podcast. So maybe we'll skip right beyond that. I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm glad you're striving through it. I got to tell you, I have spent a few days looking at the work that you and your colleagues are doing at Foulmouth Creative. I'd encourage anyone who's listening to this to check it out. It is some of the most dialed, humorous, but also very, very specific in ways in which you can almost see the strategy coming out of the outputs. And I was just blown away by it. So I'm very excited to talk to you today. I know many of the people listening will want to hear some of the vision that you've uncovered over the course of the past. Has it been a year and a bit now? Is that right?
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 years in April.
So I guess just to kick things off and dive right into this, I wonder if I could start with a question that I get asked a lot about. It's the most common thing that people ask me, and it's a little bit about what the moment was when you knew that you needed to start something of your own. Like, was there this tipping point or moment you knew that, hey, I've got to go do this thing?
100%. It had always percolated in the back of my brain through, the big agencies that I had been at. A lot of big holding companies was where I sort of started my career. And then, I had some smaller agency experience as well. And honestly, it was the last place I was. I was a partner at it, and it was a hybrid production creative shop. And I was brought in to help build out that creative arm a little bit and that strategy arm. And it just didn't hit, for a number of different reasons. But ultimately, I was partnered with two older men, and even though I was a business partner in it, I still was running into a lot of conversations with them like, hey, you know what, like in this client meeting, why don't we let X, Y, and Z take the lead because people respond better to men in meetings. Or, hey, let's make sure that you tone it down. Don't do this, don't do that. Don't be yourself. And I was so fucking over it. I was so done with it. And that sort of fizzled out. And the explosive day that it fizzled is a soft word for what happened. But the day that I realized that it wasn't going to be the right fit at that other place, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. If these assholes can start an agency, I can start an agency. And I reached out to my two now business partners, and it was honestly just this beautiful happenstance of synchronicity that my now managing director, Jourdan Hughes, and my longtime creative partner, Tessa Paneri, were both in positions to jump ship and start an agency right along with me. It was great. Like I sent a text to them and I was like, hey, do you guys want to start our own agency? Like 90 seconds later, Jourdan texts back and she's like, fuck yes, I'm in. 6 weeks later, we launched. So that was as fast as it went. And like the second that decision was made, we were like, fucking go, like pedal on, let's go. We got all of our stuff together. We got all of our site. We, had amazing help from Steve Sapka to get us the PR to get in and really get some splash and notice that way. And we were off to the races. It was 6 weeks.
What an incredible sort of genesis moment. As you describe it, I think we're all getting an idea as to how we came up with the term foul-mouthed creative in terms of the name, which is great. My mom's not listening, so feel free to continue. The second thing would be, I think partnership matters in these instances. There's like one side of it, and again, this is my perspective. I wonder if you could share yours. One is sort of the independent frustration, and then the solve is also who do I sort of arm as the team, build around this in order to be successful. And I wonder, like you in your story didn't have any hesitation as to who these individuals were. And clearly they had no hesitation in texting you back and saying, fuck it, I'm in. This had to be something you were thinking about in your guts prior to that moment, or was it literally just that moment you're like, I'm out?
Well, the three of us had all worked together at a previous agency. And during 2020, I think there was a one-off conversation that I had with Jourdan Hughes, and she was the West Coast account director for this agency. And she and I hit it off. We worked together on a number of clients. And then Tessa, was my design counterpart during this. And Jourdan and I had a conversation once in 5 minutes of like, why don't we just start our own? And we're like, haha, yeah. Anyway. And then whatever it was, 3.5 years later, it came to fruition. So here's the thing that I feel like we got right above everything else. And it's the trust and the chemistry we have between the three of us is unparalleled to anything I've had before, ever. And that chemistry comes through when we're doing our work together. And then also when we're talking with our client partners and, any other partnerships that we have on it, is we have fun together. We love each other. We trust each other. That doesn't mean that we don't disagree on things. We disagree on stuff all the time, but it's in a healthy way and we talk through it. And in fact, even in our sort of like launch bylaws that we wrote, we have something very specific called the Uranus clause, that if at any point, if the three of us are having some sort of headbutting issue with anything, right? Like a direction of a project or a business itself, anything like that, and we can tell that it's going to get contentious, any one of us can say Uranus. And that is the immediate sign to pause, and we sleep on it and revisit it that next day. It ends the conversation right there. We're all like, cool, revisit. 100% of the time that next day, we're like, oh, cool, let's come to a meeting here. And it's no stress, no issue. It's so healthy. It's so healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I almost want to take that idea and deploy it with my wife, like so that we don't go to bed angry. And I just say, hey, Uranus clause, Rachel told me to say it. So if you get a phone call from my wife, I apologize, but I'm sure you'll be kind. Which sort of leads me, there was one thing in your opening story that struck with me that I want to come back to, which is about sort of this male, the male characteristic. You described that meeting so beautifully that I want to come back to that, because I do notice that all the founders of Foulmouth are women. So I want to pause, just put that on the shelf for a second, because I think the other more common question I get is, when you decided to take the leap, the lifeline of an agency is clients. And when you made that leap, when you made those texts or sent those texts, made the phone calls, did you start your agency with clients already, or did you start it with a list? I think that would be really helpful to share a little bit of like your story with people who are sitting on the sidelines thinking, well, I'd love to, but
yeah. Well, and I can speak freely because all of my non-solicits I have now
Yay!
Yay! So, like you said, I mean, the lifeblood of all of this is our brand partners, but you know, one level deeper than that, it's the relationships that you have. And you know, when I left the previous place, there were two amazing clients who heard I was leaving, you know, texted me. They're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And so I kind of gave them the scoop, and they were like, "Well, we're coming with you. You know, like we love you. We love working with you." And I was like, "Yeah, unfortunately, I can't because of, you know, all these things that I signed." And one client in particular goes, "Okay, but like, I didn't sign those. Like, you signed those. I'm going to go talk to our lawyers and see how we can do a workaround on this." Wow. And because I'm doing this. And so it was actually our GameStop client that did it. And she has since left GameStop and is now at another place and is still one of our clients and brought us, you know, along with her on that journey. But I'd say our first 3 or 4 legitimate beefy clients were from past relationships. And whether it was like existing ones that were just sort of carried over into us starting Foulmouth, or it was even stuff from years back where I would, you know, get hit up by somebody who was like, "Hey, we worked together back in Los Angeles in, you know, 2015, saw that you're doing this thing. Let's do a project together." And it just started snowballing from there. And we don't pitch in a traditional sense at all. We decided to not do that. It was one of the things when we're like, we can define what this means for ourselves. We don't have to do it the way that the industry has always said is the right way to do it. And everything has been relationships, word of mouth, getting introduced to new people based on relationships. And it's been amazing. You know, it just goes to show that, I don't know, like just be yourself. People are going to know what they expect from you when they've worked with you before. And I don't know if it's a good fit, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think in our business, and not too dissimilar from other businesses, relationships matter. You know, when you're in the trenches with clients and you develop this incredibly powerful story or piece of work that is as beneficial for you, the agency, if not more so for the client, those relationships stick through most non-competes. I'm staggered that that a client would say, let me just go to my lawyer and check this out. But I think that speaks to the commitment level and your relationship. So, I mean, I know for me, there was a sort of a feeling in the pit of my stomach saying, well, we're going to do this and maybe some will come and maybe some don't. But the word bravery comes to mind here. And I wonder if you had a similar thought of like, come hell or high water, we're going to be successful. Talk me through a little bit about your mentality when the three of you stared at each other in front of the whiteboard on day one and you were like, okay, let's go.
There was no room for failure in my mind, right? We were going to do it. It was going to be an adventure. And if it didn't end up working out, at least we were going to fail spectacularly. Right? Like there wasn't this like, oh my God, what if we do this? Is there going to be a misstep? Is there going to be this? We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know what a B&O tax was, right? Like that was never in our world at all because we had always been at larger agencies. And I was scared as shit, but like you do it scared, you know? I have significant anxiety, just, you know, in general, lifelong thing. And it's almost become a superpower because I'm so used to having that anxiety that I'm like, fuck it, I'll do it anyway. And what's the worst that's going to happen? And it was that trust in ourselves, honestly. And had I not had Jourdan and Tessa along with me, it would have been a much different story. We were constantly gut checking each other, like, hey, if at any point this isn't going to work for you for X, Y, and Z, it's okay. Like, we all know that this has to be something that's the three of us completely and that we're all in on. And never once did any of us say, guys, I don't think this is right for me. I don't think it was this. We just like head down and plowed through it. I mean, we did it scared, and then it got less scary. And then when we were like, oh, we don't know how to do this or like how to do this, phone calls. I swear to God, the first 4 months of this, I was on the phone all day long, just dialing up anybody that I could talk to be like, hey, this is happening. Do you have any idea how X, Y, and Z happens? Or like, how do we apply for health insurance, right? Like even those very basic things. And doors just start opening up when you are spinning your own energy. People want to get sucked into that same cyclone. People want to help. And don't be afraid of asking for that help or just putting out into the, your sphere of whatever. I mean, God, everyone hates the fucking word networking. That's not at all what I'm talking about here, because that sounds so
mechanical. Yeah, performative.
Yeah, and just like, oh, I'm going to do this and be friendly because that's what I have to do. It was none of that. It was people who we have honest and deep relationships with, and they wanted to help. It was incredible. It absolutely was incredible.
It sounds incredible. It also sounds like a mandatory. I mean, you're speaking to me and I'm replaying the moments in November of 2020 for myself where same situation. You're making phone calls, you're grinding, you don't know the answers. They're not infinitely clear to you. And you and your partners sit down together and you're like, you're on first, you're on second, like, let's go. Which brings me to that point I wanted to circle back on about your partners that are your founders at Foulmouth are all women.
Yeah.
And I want you to maybe expand a little bit on, was that intentional? What have you learned from it? And what does that mean for people who decide they want to work with you guys?
Yeah. Incredibly intentional. It's not to say that we've worked with or haven't worked with incredibly talented people who aren't women or identify as women, any of that stuff. But we wanted to make sure that we felt we were doing something different and putting something else out there. I wanted us to be who I needed to see when I was starting out at Crispin Porter Bogusky. And there was like one creative director who was a woman, in all of Crispin at that time. Or after that, I went to Deutsch, and I had so much fortune that I was under Karen Costello's little wing at that time. She was executive creative director, and saw the power that she knew in herself and could hold in the fact that she was a woman. And she very much shaped my understanding and beliefs, both in leadership and what an agency could look like from that point of view. I mean, less than 1% of agencies that exist have women ownership, much less 100% women ownership. That's insane. Like, how can you have something where, what is it? It's like the buying power is 85% are women, in wanting to buy products or services or whatever it is that you're going through, 85%. And yet less than 1% of agencies that are talking to these consumers have that sort of leadership behind it. That's wild, and especially compared to, startups across the board, right? It's a little bit more balanced. I think it's something like 48% of small businesses have women ownership, just like as a blanket business. Right. And again, less than 1% of agencies. That's absolutely. So we were like, well, why is that? Let's uncover all of this stuff. And there's so many reasons for it. There's a whole podcast that we could do to talk about that, but it's also a lot of stuff that people have talked about before. There's nothing like new or groundbreaking behind it, other than the fact that we were like, well, we can do this, and we can go up against the old guard, those old boys club, and we write our own rules. In fact, I don't care about the other rules. I don't care about what's worked for other people, because that wasn't us. It wasn't based on the reasons that we wanted to set out to do our own agency and what works for us in the three of us, right? And so we just sort of did it. We decided to just invent our own industry, and in a sense, and
Wow.
and it kind of worked out, when you just set your own hard boundaries and you follow those. I mean, it probably doesn't work out 100% of the time, but like, why would you do it if you weren't going to try and do it on your own,
And what better message in an industry where we are constantly challenged with creating something new and interesting and different, than to do that at the very foundation of your company?
100%. Right? How can we be these groundbreaking creatives? I mean, our jobs are to come up with new shit all the time, or take two existing things, put it together to create something new. I don't know. They say that there's no new ideas out there and all that. Who cares? Fuck it, whatever. Like, we have to come up with something that breaks through the noise and understand people. And people are not tidy, they're not bland. They aren't cookie cutter. And yet agencies seem to think the holding company things, it's all the same cookie cutter, stamp and repeat of how it goes. So why would we create something for ourselves and then tell potential clients like, oh no, we're going to break through, we're going to do something new and different, if even in our own world, we can't do that ourselves for our own product of Foul Mouth Creative. And it's more fun, man. Like, I don't know, that it's not about finding the answers. It's about that adventure and the story of it,
The journey in getting there in many cases is part of the reason why we got in this business in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly. And at a certain point when, as a creative, you how to do campaigns, how to do that stuff, how to get to the ideas, or when the idea is feeling good, you're like, oh, this is checking all those things. But this was a totally new beast too, right? So just from that like interest and like, ooh, here's a new challenge, was so fun to do. Yeah. It was the most important brief of my career, and as it should be, because it's our lives,
Yeah, it's your baby. Yeah. I mean, and it impacts your work clearly. We'll talk about that in a second. I guess, the piece that I think many would find interesting is we are, as humans, we're creatures that we like to have a set understanding or expectation of what's in front of us. And you've just gone through this incredible story of how you started and didn't know, left from right or up from down in many cases. And that's probably true with anyone who started anything of merit. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe one or two examples of things you expected that actually happened, and then these unexpected things where you were like, holy shit, I'm tapping into something really interesting here?
Ooh, that's a big question. Things that I expected, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I expected, that's a stumper.
Well, I mean,
honestly, I don't know. I think if I had known what I was expecting, then it would have been done way before that, like that was part of the magic of this, is that we didn't know what to expect. We had no idea. And we just wanted it to feel right for us. And I think that's the best part, is that when we jumped into this, and maybe this is the thing where I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I didn't know that it could happen this way. I thought that I was at the end of my agency section of my career, right before starting Foul Mouth. I was like, I can't go back to big holding company stuff. I've done that. I know what it looks like. There's some great agencies out there, but it's going to be the same, more of the same, more of all of that. And it was like, it's either going client side or trying my hand at the final frontier of doing your own agency. And we obviously, chose the final frontier aspect. And it's the best time of my career. It's not the most lucrative time of my career, but
yeah, I can speak to it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But like, God, who fucking cares now? It's great. I mean, there's hard days. There's days where you still want to just, absolutely yeet your computer into the Puget Sound or whatever. But like, it's great when you don't have anybody telling you what to do or how to do it. You have to do it yourself. And then you hold yourself to that. Is harder than any boss I've ever had, is Jourdan Hughes.
I can sympathize with all of those statements, and it is a difficult question, right? Like you don't really know what to expect, so everything's a surprise, and most things are unexpected. As we head towards the close of our conversation, I wonder if you could imagine, for instance, you were talking to someone who is sitting on the sidelines, right? And we've been there. You and I both have been in these situations where we're in our cubicle and we're staring at a brief we don't necessarily are equipped to support. And we've got bosses that, like in your early instance about, don't say this and only say that, and please do that.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on the sidelines and you're thinking about taking this leap, you're thinking about texting and calling your partners and saying, fuck it, let's do it. What would you tell them? What would you say? What would you tell them?
To say to people listening in?
Yeah.
Honestly, be outspoken, the unusual choices people make them. And that's the same for brands and agencies. Make those unusual choices, be weird and wonderful and complex. That's what it's all about. That's this whole experience. And it's the heart and the essence of creativity is trying something new. And if it fails, make sure you fail spectacularly. Don't go quiet into that good night,
Yeah, that's great feedback. I think that's, to someone sitting on the sidelines who's listening into that, I think your story will resonate more than most, just given the good ideas are often born out of frustration.
Yeah.
And
stay mad.
Yeah. Stay mad, curse a lot, except around your parents. Rachel, you are so lovely. You're a wonderful guest, and frankly, I'd use the term inspiration to many. I hope that you are.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for joining us and being the first guest on year one.
I love it. It's an honor.
Where can people find you? Tell us.
Yeah, it's foulmouthcreative.com is our site. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. Just drop us a line. We're always down to chat with anybody, especially, marginalized people who are trying to make their way in, an otherwise pretty structured industry. So
awesome.
Do it.
Well, Rachel, thank you for joining us, and thank all of you listeners for listening in. We are really looking forward to more of these conversations into the future as well. Thank you to Indie Agency News for producing and helping bring these stories to life. Rachel, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Christian.